Now, let me bring in our next guest here on this topic. It's Ralph Schoellhammer. He's a political analyst and he joins us now live from Vienna. Good to see you, Ralph. Given how these EU parliamentary elections went with a sharp steer towards the right, are you surprised that now we're seeing these massive demonstrations against the far right?
Well, I would be very careful about these demonstrations. They take place, for example, in Paris. I would like to remind your viewers that the National Rally won every single department in France with the exception of Paris. So we should not blind ourselves to the broader French opinion just because we get a few pictures out of Paris. In current polls, the National Rally is number one. I think they will do very well in the upcoming parliamentary elections. So what we see on TV is not often necessarily a reflection about what's happening at the voting booth. There were national demonstrations in Germany against the AfD. There were national demonstrations against the Freedom Party in Austria, yet those parties did very well in the actual elections. In a democracy, what matters is not those who yell in the streets, it's those who go to vote. And at the moment, that trend is moving towards the right and not towards the left.
So this trend that you're talking about, why did Europe see such a sharp rise of the right-wing parties? Is it because mainstream has also shifted to the right?
No, I don't think the mainstream has shifted to the right, and I would also not call these parties far right. Also, what your previous contributor said, I would challenge that view. The positions of Le Pen or of Meloni are precisely the kind of positions that mainstream conservatives had 30, 40 years ago. It is the left moved ever further to the left that now regular right-wing parties all of a sudden are called far-right or radical right-wing parties. Charles de Gaulle, I would assume these days, would vote for the National Rally. So this is a perception problem. The people have made very clear for 30 years in Europe what their main problems are. Among them, a top priority was the limitation of migration. That did not happen. Most people, particularly in Western Europe, feel that mass migration has not been to their advantage, that it has caused more problems than benefits, and the parties that voiced this, that made these concerns heard, they got the people's votes. This is not rocket science. It's very clear why people voted for right-wing parties.
Okay, so why did they vote then?
Because the right-wing parties were the ones that at least promised that they will restrict migration. They also said that they're against the war in Ukraine. I think that's a problematic position, but that's my personal opinion. But that has been on the mind of many parties in Europe. We see it from Orban's Fidesz, again to the Austrian Freedom Party, to the French National Rally, to Meloni's Italy is slightly different. But the main topic, apart from the war in Ukraine, was migration. The Europeans want less migration. Now we can disagree or agree on whether or not that sentiment is justified, but that is what's going on. And as long as the left ignores these issues, they will lose elections. So this is just the beginning. I think the idea, as we heard previously, that this was a one-off and now Macron will come back riding like Napoleon on a white steed and win the elections or something, that is not going to happen. The rise of the right is just about to begin. So I think what we saw over the last couple of days is not the end. That's the beginning of the rightward shift of Europe.
Okay, well, Ralph, in your studies, you specifically look at cultural factors and identity formation and how that sort of impacts social fabric of countries. So do you think that's identity or the lack of feeling like you actually belong to the identity of that country might be contributing here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can give you a direct example. In Germany, the biggest winners of the elections, whether with the party with which many of your viewers might be familiar, was the AfD, which is to the right. But another party who made huge gains was the so-called Allianz Sarah Wagenknecht, which is a left-wing party. But they are a left-wing party with a twist. They're very left-wing economically, but they are very right-wing when it comes to borders, when it comes to migration, when it comes to matters of identity. And they also won in the elections. So basically, the one thing that currently resonates the most with voters in Europe is the matter of patriotism, is the matter of national identity. We see the same with Nigel Farage in the United Kingdom. He basically runs an entire campaign on the matter of patriotism, and he's doing very well with it. Giorgia Meloni in Italy did the same thing. Of all the incumbent governments in Europe, the only incumbent government that increased their vote share was Meloni's Brothers of Italy, because they run on this patriotic platform. That is the main sentiment in Europe. Europeans are tired of constantly being told that they are Nazis, that they are fascists, that they are racists, that they are bigots. They want to keep their traditions. They want to keep their culture. They want to keep social cohesion. And they feel that all of this is under threat due to mass migration. Again, we might disagree with this, but this is the general sentiment for a significant chunk of the population.
Very good to hear your views and thoughts. That's Ralph Schoellhammer, a political analyst, live for us from Vienna. Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks for having me.